So what's going on in the world of big compute? Welcome to AI Insights with John Roese. Today I have Tom Burke from Nscale with me to talk about, I call it big compute. There's a lot going on in AI, but some of the environments that are being built and deployed are just simply massive. You guys are right in the center of it. Maybe people don't know Nscale, especially in maybe the US market as much as you're pretty well known in the UK and other places, but maybe introduce yourself and introduce the company and kind of give us a little bit of background of what you've been up to.
Sure. John, first and foremost, great to see you. Yeah. Thanks for having us. We appreciate all that you do for us as part of the Dell partnership at Nscale. Nscale was really a company that was founded around the need to go bring sovereign compute capacity to Europe. We're very proud of our European heritage, very proud to be based in the UK. And when you look at really the original thesis for the company, we spent 2 years in stealth mode acquiring very strategic power assets, the ability to go run in-country sovereign workloads throughout the central EU, while at the same time, we always viewed it as a hub and spoke model when it comes to sovereignty. And so at the same time, we acquired very large-scale assets up in the Arctic Circle. And for Nscale, that's Norway, where we have access to some of the lowest cost green-based power, some of the cheapest power on the planet. And really what it does is it gives our customers choice and optionality. The ability to go run in-country sovereign workloads where you need it, that are mission critical, while at the same time, the ability to go burst that non-mission critical workloads to areas that we can run a more cost-effective solution for them. But at the end of the day, it comes down to control and optionality. And that's a big part of what we're looking to roll out at Nscale for our customer base. What I would tell you, John, is one of the things we've learned is sovereign is much more than just Europe. And that's a big part of the big bang deployments we're doing, not just in Europe, throughout the United States, the APAC region as well. And what I would say is this, when it comes to that hub and spoke model, that's very much a blueprint that we are looking to roll out across the globe. The ability to give our customers the choice and optionality that they need to be able to go take advantage of really the wave of innovation that's coming, while also ensuring that they are still taking advantage of that first mover advantage that you see every single day as these new industries are transformed.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on. I mean, there's two dimensions. One, sovereign kind of emerged as a fourth market last year, which was pretty exciting because not everybody had contemplated this idea that there was another topology that would be helpful. And it turns out, some of it was because of regulatory, some of it was performance, some of it was just a general preference for other options than what we had. So we had, you could do things completely on-prem, you could do things in a cloud environment, but there were other choices that people were exploring. And, I think that was pretty clear, it led to this fourth market. But one of the things that we've seen is there's so much more you can do with that by having that additional option. And we've thrown out, wacky ideas about what the future might look like. The robotics industry is not just about the robots, it's about the back end of the robots. Well, where should the back end of the robots live? Should it live in some place that's indeterminate, or should it live in a place that's compatible with the policies, regulations, and governmental priorities? Sovereign or, being in a country, if you're going to be the back end of the robotic systems that runs a national security apparatus or runs a transportation infrastructure, seems logical. We think about agents. We started to talk about, agents do work. Some work is regulated by the government. If the agents are going to do work and it's tied to a regulation, should the government care where the agents actually live? Well, it turns out they probably will, and we think that's going to be a big deal. The biggest one, the most exciting one we think about is when you start thinking about resiliency of AI factories. An AI factory by itself is not intrinsically resilient. You have to make it resilient. Well, you could build a second AI factory and just have it sit there idle. That's kind of silly. Or if you have access to infrastructures like you guys provide, I can have a virtual AI factory, and the only thing I need is the ability to turn on 1,000 GPUs when I need them, which is your business. And so, nobody's built this fully yet, but as we gamed out what you could do with this kind of infrastructure is another platform for, and this is purely from an enterprise context, we got very excited. I'm not sure, I'm sure you're excited about the space, but this blurring of enterprise and sovereign and this additional platform and what people can do with it, I think is a big deal, but I don't think it's fully contemplated by the industry yet.
I couldn't agree more. And I think when you look at the evolution that we're going through right now, as far as these mission critical AI decisions, it's really no different than what we went through when public cloud came on the scene. And the answer there was hybrid. And I think it's no different than what we're seeing today as far as how that builds out. But I think, John, you're down a key point, which is a use case driven methodology to go map out, is this truly a sovereign workload and a sovereign requirement that I need complete control at every single layer of the stack? Yeah. Or is this a workload that I want someone just to go run for me? But at the same time, you need that optionality. And for Nscale, that's our control plane. Open source-based methodologies, complete access to the code base, control as far as who has access to the keys to go operate that control plane layer that we deliver for our customers. But at the end of the day, I think what's most important is whether you're running some of the biggest training clusters in the world, whether you're running inference at scale, or the ability to go deliver all the way at the edge, what's most important is two things. Number one, use case-driven methodology, how you map out these requirements. And then number two, optionality for where you go deploy. And that's a big part of what we're doing at Nscale, to be able to go control every layer of the stack. As far as our vertically integrated approach, for us it starts with the power, the ability for us to go stand up our own microgrid behind the meter, which was a big part of some of the announcements we've made here over the last 6 months, given a lot of the regulatory landscape that we're seeing play out here in the United States. But at the same time, the ability to go stand up our own AI factories, to develop our own prefabricated modular data centers, certainly the GPU deployment, and then differentiate with the optionality as far as the software stack that we run on top, while ensuring complete control to our end customers. But I think to your point, there are trade-offs. It's never going to be all or nothing, much like the cloud wasn't back in the public cloud coming on the scenes. And what's most important is as you map out those requirements, there shouldn't be a trade-off. Is this sovereign or is it not? Is it more expensive or is it not? It's really about planning ahead, being able to go architect that solution for those sovereign requirements, and then most importantly, ensuring that from a sovereign perspective, that's an ongoing operational model to ensure that you meet those requirements as far as who has access and control of every layer of the stack. And that's something we're very proud to partner with Dell on as far as what we roll out for our global customer base.
Yeah, I think that's the basis of the relationship isn't purely just about the technology. I think philosophically we're aligned. Michael is a big believer in open and choice and democratization of technology. In AI, that means you have optionality about putting the right workload in the right place. One of the other dimensions of our partnership, though, is you build big systems. You have, people may not realize how big some of the environments you're putting in place are. The underlying technology is super important, but the mechanism to actually make it real is the supply chain. And so maybe share with you a little bit about your experiences with us and our collaboration around actually going from concept to production and how that's been working and what you see as the significance of the AI actual supply chain in making this thing a reality.
It's a great question. So when you look at one of our deployments today, a single site that we go roll out for a customer, about 600,000 components in a single deployment. 600,000 different parts and pieces that are making up this AI factory solution that is purpose-built at the factory level with Dell. A big part of that, as far as the control that goes into these sovereign requirements, is where do these parts come from? Who's touched these parts? Who was involved in that manufacturing process? Where was that manufacturing process delivered from? Those are requirements that, as a 2-year-old company, you can never do on your own. I think at Nscale, we're laser focused on delivering a world-class cloud experience for our customers. And it's the partnership with Dell from a supply chain perspective that is able to go meet those requirements. And I'll give you a real-life example. One of the largest frontier model builders in the market today that we support. Those requirements for them from a supply chain perspective as far as what goes into their system that they rely on are really no different than a lot of the US government type requirements. At Nscale, we would have no way to do that, but certainly that's a big value of our Dell partnership, something that you guys have been doing for 40 plus years with the US federal government. The ability for us to go certainly adhere to the speed and the timeline for how fast this innovation is happening, while also maintaining control around the solutions that we deliver, the compliance that goes into it, and ensuring that we can stand behind the parts and components that go into our end customer solution. And we couldn't do that without Dell, and it's a big part of really why we turned to Dell from a global perspective to be able to go address these client requirements.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the let's call it the complexity of the system, but also the need to make it predictable. And I love to hear this because we've always been very proud of our supply chain. We have the largest supply chain in the tech industry. We think we do fantastic work. We've innovated for decades. We have things like secure component verification and all kinds of things that we built into the system. But in the old days, before AI, the people who really cared were intelligence agencies, militaries, big banks, and it was kind of not that important to everybody else, even unless they really thought about it. In the AI cycle, it's a completely different animal. AI is the foundational technology that's going to power industry and the world. and where it comes from and how you get it and whether or not it's trustworthy is a big deal. So for us, we've always loved our supply chain, but maybe it was underappreciated or not as visible. Now it is extremely visible. So I think that we're great to hear that that's a key characteristic of what makes the relationship special, what makes this all work.
I think that's probably what's so remarkable around this AI movement that's been playing out really since that GPT moment hit in 2022, which is the complexities around the vast ecosystem that goes into this. Suddenly, what used to be a software world is how do we go take infrastructure and make it intelligent? Yeah. And I think when you look at where we've come from, and we've come from a world where there were really just 10 consumers of large-scale compute to where we are today, Dell out talking about the 5,000 customers today that are in production. It's remarkable how quickly we've come, but more importantly, the ecosystems we've pulled together to go do it, from the power generation to very large-scale deployment and construction build-outs, to certainly the deployment around the GPUs themselves, and then the software orchestration layer, and the ability to go tap into the leading open source technologies, really a community-based approach to innovation, to be able to go deliver those checks and balances that are so important in this AI era.
I'm an electrical engineer, so I'm always happy when, cold plates are sexy and these kind of underlying technologies are now being appreciated. So it's great. It's great to hear. Hey, maybe one last question for you. You've been on this journey for a while. You're navigating a complex industry. Any lessons learned about either the industry or the technology that you think would be helpful for other people to hear? You're pretty far along. The rest of the industry is moving. We're all trying to learn from each other. But if you had to give advice to an enterprise CIO or chief AI officer or somebody in the industry, are there any things that kind of you felt like were the moments where you learned something? You felt like this was an aha moment and other people would benefit from it?
So my advice would be this. I think we've clearly seen an inflection point across the industry, going from experimentation to production systems. And I think we're starting to see the leaders separate themselves from the pack. So my advice would be get started. I think you can run into analysis paralysis, especially around this sovereign topic, if you go too deep into the requirements versus just get started. Even if that means get started on premise, get started in a small public cloud type environment. Half of the battle is getting started that evolution to help ensure that you can have that first mover advantage. What I would predict is 3 years from now, when you look at the leaders across those industries that we play in together, especially the highly regulated industries, you're going to see that flipped upside down as far as the leaders in that space, and it will be driven by the baseline intelligence of their organization. And I would say that the fastest path to do it is just to get started. Even if it's a small footprint on-prem, that evolution, those requirements you build out over time, ensure that you choose the right partner that can scale with you. Yeah. But I would say dip your toe in the water and get started, and we'll look forward to partnering with you.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in strong governance and strong kind of business priorities, but that's not an excuse not to do anything. Because I tell people the only really bad AI project, if you've defined something worth doing, is one that sits there as a theory forever. The life cycle of an AI solution might be 2 years.
Right.
Spending 3 years to figure out how to do something that will last 2 years is kind of the wrong format. Deciding it's good enough, we know what the target is, trust the technology that it'll make incremental progress, but also realize this is an adaptive technology. If your first agent doesn't do exactly what you want, then change the prompt. It's not hard, but there's a caution. We sometimes make perfection the enemy of good, and in the AI world, getting in the game right now is critical. I think you're spot on.
I couldn't agree
there.
more.
Yep.
It's just as much a cultural change as a technology change, and that's a big part of bringing those two worlds together between the technical community and the business community to be able to go really redefine how the enterprise operates.
Yep. Well, thanks for joining. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the partnership. We spoke last year. Well, maybe we'll get together next year, see how you're doing. But fantastic progress. I spent a lot of time in the UK and Europe, and you guys are quite popular right now. But there's a lot of good support for what you're doing, and it's nice to have another choice and more options to make this real.
Well, John, thank you. We appreciate the partnership and all that you do for us.
Great. Thanks very much.